So I hear we're going to be talking about clear cooperation. It's like a big thing somehow.
Yeah, there's so much going on, Tristan. It's like, you know, we've been talking about MLS. I was thinking it was a two-wheel apple cart, but it's a three-legged stool.
Explain that to me. How do you see it that way?
Well, and what's happening is there are forces that are ripping the legs off the stool.
Okay.
Now, if you can imagine a two-wheel cart, horse-drawn cart, right? Two wheels.
Mm-hmm.
But now that they've started to rip off two wheels, I have to find a third one. So I went from a two-wheeled cart to a three-legged stool. So that's where we are now. We're talking about the three-legged stool. And John will talk a little bit more about that. So we've been spending, here he comes, we've been spending a lot of time talking about the DOJ, the settlement, NAR, and the big, big change, which really I don't think everybody has really felt yet, and that is the removal of the offer of compensation from the MLS. And that is just a giant deal. And I know people try to play that down,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not paid to play things down. And so it's a big deal. Now, that's not to say people won't figure out new ways to do business and that there won't be people that are successful, but the removal of the offer of compensation was a major pull from out of what makes MLS. Another thing that makes MLS is the requirement that you put your listings in the MLS. And so this is a major, major point, and John's going to get into it with the new litigation. So forget the other litigation for a moment, the removal of the offer of compensation.
Mm-hmm.
There's this other piece that is really another critical component of what makes MLS work, and that is the fact that you have to put your listings in the MLS if you're a participant of the MLS. The reason that's important is if we didn't have to put our listings in, many of us would not put our listings in until we figured out we couldn't sell them on our own. And once we figured out we couldn't sell them on our own, then we'd put them in.
I mean,
But the
you're not
MLS got
wrong.
rules.
You're
It
not
says
wrong,
you
Saul.
got to put them in. So I say, well, I got to put them in. If I didn't need to put them in, I'd put the lousy listings in. I'd keep the good listings out. I know that's probably a breach of fiduciary duty, but I don't put that past anybody because we know that's exactly what takes place. And
Well,
that's why commercial MLSs don't really work that well because you don't have to put your listings in. And so we had an issue a number of years ago because the market was so hot. New companies popped up that said basically, don't have to put your listing in the MLS. It's better if you put it in an off MLS group. And so NAR developed a policy called Clear Cooperation.
yep.
And Clear Cooperation was just an extenuation of this requirement that you have to put your listings into the MLS. That's what makes the MLS work. And
Mm-hmm.
now that's being challenged. And we know a lot of people don't like it, and it's not politically correct to say you like it, but making you put your listings in the MLS is what makes the MLS work. I trust that you're going to put your good listings in as well as your bad listings.
Mm-hmm.
You trust as well. The consumers get to see everything. The sellers get the exposure working with one broker. The buyers get to see everything working with one agent. It works great. And is there now a threat to removing that requirement that you put your listings into the MLS in a timely way? And the answer is yes, there is. And I'll turn it over to John Riley, who can elaborate on that.
Well, we're starting to see a lot of action on the front of the new policy, which is actually a 5-year-old policy, the Clear Cooperation policy. And it's starting to appear in lawsuits. And these lawsuits are not covered, by the way, by the NAR settlement that we've been talking for weeks. These are independent. A lot of them are based on things like group boycotts.
Yep.
And So there are going to be new rules for those. And a lot of times the group boycott is looked at with a per se ruling. In other words, it's on its face just about illegal. So it's serious. And one of the things that is happening is we're trying to get a feeling in the industry of people's reaction to this policy. And what the WAVE group and Marilyn Wilson and Victor did was they sent out a survey recently, and they just published that survey. And the survey revealed that 28% of the people were okay with keeping it the way it is, but the rest of them wanted it to change. And of course, one of the major changes is the exception for office exclusives. And we've seen that with some of the companies, like Compass has an extensive office exclusive. And we revealed a lot of those in this recent article.
I have a question.
In the Data Advocate.
First off, I did put up the article, guys, in the chat so you can watch it, so you can read it. John did an amazing job on that. I reread it 3 times because I was like, what does that mean? What did that say? Do the same thing, please. There it is. I have a question about companies like Compass, because the way that they sell it, and I'm not agreeing or disagreeing yet. I just want to know what you think first. The way that they sell it to their agents, because I listened to it last week, is they're saying, hey, this is how you lead with value, everyone. We've got a list of homes that are off market, and that's going to help you lock in the client and say, hey, this is what you get. They're all internal, right? This is what you get from us. Not only can we test out your property off market with our own agents all across the United States or wherever they are, but we also have a list of properties that you don't see out there yet that we can only bring to you. Kind of like what you're saying, Saul, which is like, let's try to sell it ourselves, but within a brokerage. And that's for a while, and in part, how New York still works, like Manhattan. So how do we go up against that? And is that going to disappear? What are you guys seeing when it comes to that?
So that's the issue. So first of all, off market, what does that really mean? Because if you've got a listing agreement signed, that's different than off market, right? Off market is, hey, I know Tristan's got a house. He hasn't really said to anybody he wants to sell it, except I know that he wants to sell it. It's an off market property. And if I bring somebody a buyer, I know Tristan might pay me to bring him a buyer. So that's off market. That's different than taking a listing to sell
leaving it off the MLS.
That's really, off market is off market. Off MLS is, I've got a listing agreement, but I'm not going to put it in the MLS.
Well, companies can do that within themselves, right?
Only if they get so I don't know. It depends. If you go out and you get a list, if you're a member of the MLS, no, you have to put it into the MLS. That's what clear cooperation is all about. When people say clear cooperation, they mean if I take a listing agreement, I get a listing agreement, I've agreed to market a property for sale, I've got 24 hours to put it into the MLS. And if I don't, now, is there an exception? Yeah, there's an exception. That's if I can get the seller to sign a document saying, keep it off of the MLS. Now, what seller really is going to, and you can make up all kinds of reasons. Well, it's Cher's house and Cher doesn't want people to know she's selling it. Okay, I'll buy that. Yeah, right. That's legitimate. And there might be other reasons, but for the most part, you take a listing, you've offered to market it. The greatest marketing tool we have to sell a property is to put it in the MLS where it gets maximum exposure.
Got it.
And for what reason would I not put it in the MLS? And the answer is so I can double end it. The only reason I wouldn't put it in the MLS, other than some exceptions, which by the way, I can get an office exclusive signed and keep it out of the MLS. But if I actually take that listing, I get a contract to market it, I've got to get it into the MLS. Now, what some brokerage firms are saying is, I don't want to put it in the MLS. I've got enough agents that work for me that I would rather offer it to all my agents first. Now, is that really in the seller's best interest to offer it only to your agents first? Or is it in the seller's best interest to offer it to every agent in town to make it available? And that might be debatable, but what we've proven over the years in all markets, the MLS is an amazing tool. It gets all of this information out to the greatest number of people. But I tell you, when the interest rates went down and properties were sold, you put a sign in the ground, you get 20 offers, all of them are 20% over the listed price, and people are waiving their inspections. Brokers started thinking, why do I need to put it in the MLS? I'll just put a sign in the ground, I'll sell it myself.
I mean, well, that's always an option, right? You can always sell it yourself.
Well, you can, but if you're going to play in this world of MLS, the rule has been if we all agree to participate together, then we all agree to put our listings in. It's a level playing field, and we won't try to hold this thing off the market to try to sell it ourselves, because that could end up being a breach of fiduciary duty to the seller, because pretty much everybody admits to the fact that they want more exposure.
Well, unless they sign that document, like you're having Compass have a lot of their sellers sign that document to keep them off the MLS
Well,
for a
so
certain.
that's true. They are doing that, but then we get into this question of informed consent. Do the sellers, when they sign that document, really know what they're giving up? Or has
Yeah.
the agent just kind of run that by them? Have they really explained it adequately? And our experience with agents is they don't always explain it adequately.
Well, that's why we have the NAR settlement, because we didn't do a good enough job explaining that there's another commission here. John, what does the Department of Justice think about clear cooperation?
Well, I think they don't like it. What they did basically, they've been trying to settle with NAR on the issue of the participation rule that we talked about and we accepted. Most people are changing their practices now. But as to any discussion about a consent decree that incorporates the policy of the clear cooperation, they're not in favor of it. As a matter of fact, their attorneys recently wrote a letter saying to NAR's attorneys, all right, we're okay with the participation one, but we want more time to take a look at the clear cooperation. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull that off of the table of discussions, the clear cooperation one, and we're going to look at what you give us in response to, you remember those horrible civil investigative demands, the CID, the ones where they're far worse than you're getting a nasty letter from the IRS, saying you got to produce this document.
Yeah.
They are now reordering that and requiring compliance with that CID, which is that administrative subpoena. So that's a big show of intent from the Department of Justice. The fact that they now reordered the CID on the clear cooperation policy, that they want to understand more fully how it is a stifling competition in the marketplace.
And the competition that it's stifling is the competition to create new listing services.
Exactly.
New listing services. They say, look, if everybody has to put their listing in your MLS, then that stifles the competition of new listing services. So we, the Department of Justice, believe that maybe people ought to have 60 days to enter their listings into the MLS. When now, if 60 days in my market, it's going to be sold. So it's never going to get into the MLS. And so other entities can create their own private listing services. And those private listing services, you'll have to join those or become members of the club. And it creates a whole new concept of siloing availability of properties. And so now let's say that there's 3 different places where you could market your property for sale, the standard MLS, or a new MLS club number one, or a new MLS club number two. Number one, who decides who gets to be in the club?
Yeah, true.
Right. And then each one might have segments of available properties, but
Got
the DOJ is saying, well, we want more competition. Not only do we want more competition in commissions
Yeah.
on the agent and the consumer side, we want more competition amongst listing services,
I'm on the MLSs. Interesting,
amongst
man.
the
Because
MLSs.
so I've got a couple of things. They want to decentralize the MLS by creating more MLS companies that compete with each other, right? And give options to the consumer. I could see the reasoning behind that because that's how a free market typically works. But if I go to Europe, which you're about to go to, if I go to Europe, they live in a decentralized MLS system. And how is that working out for them?
Well, so what happens is if you're in this decentralized where there are a number of different places where properties might be made available, if brokers silo their listings and don't share their listings with other professionals, then if a seller wants exposure, they have to go to a number of brokers to get exposure. And if a buyer wants to see properties, a good sampling of the market, they have to go to more than one broker to get a good sampling. And so it doesn't work as well. One of the things that we've got because we have MLS is we have almost a liquid market. You're pretty much assured when you put your property on the market within a certain period of time, that property is going to sell because it's going to get it, or you're going to change the pricing on it because you're going to get enough exposure to realize that either you priced it too high or it sells right away, you priced it too low, or it sells just right, you priced it at the right amount. But because you've got everybody in town that can access to see what's available, so you have this complete or pretty close to complete active inventory, buyers benefit, sellers benefit, people who list and sell real estate benefit.
Yeah.
But if you say, no, let's break it apart and let's let brokers have 60 days to keep their listings to themselves, I
Yeah.
guarantee you they're not going to share their good listings with anybody else.
No, we've seen that happen in New York, in Manhattan forever. And
Yeah.
we see that happening in Europe. They just have to go and take a look. It's like, hey guys,
Yeah.
Cindy brings up a good point. One of you wants to answer it. She says, oh, where was that one? All right, well, why would they want to do that? What does the Department of Justice want? What's the bottom line? Because when they did this whole thing originally, they're like, we just want to decouple commissions. We want the negotiation to start at the beginning. What do they want here?
Well, again, and remember I said we're ripping the legs off the stool, and the
Yeah.
first leg we ripped off to destroy MLS was the offer of compensation. The next leg you're going to rip off, what makes MLS as valuable as it is everybody agrees to put their listings in.
Yeah.
And if you pull that requirement away, now you've pulled out another piece of the value of MLS, right? And the Department of Justice says we do this in the name of competition, but it really destroys this great marketplace that we have that's really the envy of the world. And people might bitch and moan about MLS, but where's the first place you go when you want to find something that's available for sale?
Zillow, which uses MLS.
Yeah, it's a valuable tool. As a
Yeah.
matter of fact, lots of people only become realtors so that they can access the MLS. That's
Yeah.
a whole other issue. So what we believe is there is this movement. It's been around for 50 years, but it's getting stronger. And a lot of this has to do with the success of the civil litigation to tear apart this capability to create this marketplace through MLS.
You know,
And
man, Francine brings up a good point. By the way, Francine, where'd you go? Great comments. And I agree with you. I think what it comes down to is what's at the core of all this and where is it stemming from? Uh, is it that the current sentiment, or maybe not so current, it seems like it's always been around, that agents are overpaid? Is this a political play against NAR and the power that they hold over a whole industry? What's the real, if we get down to the bottom of this, because it feels like it's just growing, like it's gaining momentum on all different angles.
You
What's the
know,
bottom line here?
yeah, the DOJ has stayed out of the picture as far as understanding their true position. So we have to interpret it based on some of their amicus briefs, some of their statements of interest that they have in some of the other cases. And when we add it all up, it looks like their fear is that there's an antitrust lack of competition that has caused lack of competition in setting the fees to begin with. And now by exposing other possible MLS offerings to under the clear cooperation policy.
Mhm.
So they're making a serious attempt. In fact, the two cases that were decided in favor of, let's say, NAR was the TAN case, Top
Mhm.
Agent Network case, and the PLS, Private Public Listings
I
Service,
remember that.
PLS.
Yeah, with Mauricio.
And both of those cases favored NAR. Both of them have been now looked at by the Department of Justice,
Mhm.
and in essence, the courts are allowing that to be appealed. As a matter of fact, they're kind of combining those two cases, and they've set a trial date, I believe, for November of 2025. And so we won't know until then, but hopefully there'll be some statement of interest by the DOJ about it. But our reading of the of where they stand now is they feel that they can get more competition and lower the commissions, which would be in what they're really driving for with these various positions that they're taking.
All right, so the Department of Justice now antitrust. Let's say they think we're just too big and we control too much, right? So they want to just open this up to the consumer. I'm thinking now recent trends, they're going after Google, right? And now Google, the way they're going to solve it probably is they're going to identify themselves which one they want to break out. Is it going to be YouTube? Is it going to be something Android? What is it going to be? We don't know. Now they're also going after Apple, right? Apple's got a monopoly on the App Store. It's like there needs to be a second App Store, right? There's a trend happening here. It feels like they're going after these bigger conglomerates, and we just happen to fall right into it.
You know, you
What's
use the magic word monopoly because in a couple of these statements, I've seen the word monopoly.
yeah,
NAR's MLS is a monopoly.
I
Now,
see
I
that.
haven't seen it officially, but they've sprinkled it in some of their decisions. As a
I
matter
see
of
that.
fact, Saul, I think San Diego with the Freeman case was the first one that they kind of tended to use that word.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the absent a monopoly, so the theory goes, you get more competition, and that's better for consumers.
Mm-hmm.
And so the real estate industry has been a target for years because compensation, even with elevated valuations, extreme elevated valuations of property, the compensations have remained relatively stable.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point where the Department of Justice believes the whole system, all not just one piece, but a number of pieces, and maybe you got to break it apart and start all over again. Like remember Ma Bell? Remember when there was only one telephone company?
Yep, yep, yep. I
And,
remember
and
that.
it
Then
was
they went after
okay.
Microsoft. Microsoft made it though. Yeah, they
Yeah, and
did.
Windows. Remember when they included Internet Explorer and they made them break it apart, right?
Yeah.
So when an entity becomes too powerful, even though there are consumer benefits to the power of the monopoly, somebody at within the government believes that or maybe it's a number of people, believe that if you start to break these up, eventually you're going to get a better result for the consumer.
Hmm.
And the only way you can get there is to break it up. And that the marketplace will then find itself and you'll end up with more competition, better consumer results. I mean, this is kind of what happens, right? Look at, we all got cell phones today and we're all using different services and everybody can afford it. And right. So that's part of the theory. So there's this, and this is why the Department of Justice and this is why the Sherman Antitrust Act was like created in the first place, right? Trust busting.
Yeah, right before the Gilded era. So I have a question. What's the trend here? What's next? They went after commission, starting on the seller side, right? Now they're going clear cooperation. There are other things happening in the back. What's hit next? What are we looking at? Because if you are right, and their goal is to now pull apart the MLS by making it a more even playing field with more MLSs, what's next on this thread to make that happen or make that a reality for them?
So I believe that having all of the listings available in one place. Now it might be 2 one places or 3 one places or 4, you know what I mean? But having them all available in one place is valuable to consumers. If I, as a buyer, can go to one place, now it might be place A or place B or place C or place D, but if I can go to one place, if everything's in one place, that's a benefit to sellers. They get more exposure. That's a benefit to buyers. They can see more, but right, without having to go to too many different places. If they can see everything's in one place.
Well, our taxes go to one place, right? So,
Yeah. So think about where might one place be. Now you got to, again, how do you aggregate all this information so it's available in one place? But if you could get different tools to aggregate everything that's for sale, and so that everything that was for sale is available in one place where everybody goes, then maybe we could, let me give you an example. Almost everybody shops. Well, I'll give you 2 examples. Almost everybody, when they go online, one of the places they probably go to every day is Google.
mm-hmm.
If you go to Google, it's almost like all white space. There's a query box that says Google. There's a query box, and then there's all this blank space.
Mm-hmm.
What if Google decided to create a database of properties for sale?
Wait, Microsoft tried to do that earlier this year,
Well,
right?
they tried to do it by scraping. They tried to do it by taking the data from somebody else and they didn't own it.
I thought
But
that was awesome, but they didn't.
what if Google, because everybody goes to Google, what if there was a line underneath the query box of Google said, click here to list your home for sale for free? And every time you went to Google, you saw this list your home for free on Google Real Estate.
Damn.
Eventually, everybody would know, geez, if I'm going to sell my house, one of the places I got to put it up is into the Google database
Yeah.
because everybody goes to Google. And in
Yep.
time, most of the available properties for sale would probably somehow legitimately, not stealing it, legitimately end up in the Google database. And then
Yeah.
when it sells, they could use AI to search all the county records and pull all the sold stuff out.
Well, that's why everyone was scared if Amazon would buy or come into our world, right? It almost functions the same way.
Amazon's the next. Where else does everybody go every day? Amazon. What if when Amazon sold its Prime account, you could buy Amazon Prime, and one of the benefits of Amazon Prime is you could list your house for free on Amazon. And what if Amazon put money behind that, and every time you went to Amazon said list your house for free on Amazon Prime? Oh, join Amazon Prime, you can list your house for free. And then what if Amazon bought Redfin or bought a brokerage firm? And you see, what they're interested in is not only the real estate listing, the money that can be made. They could say, list your home for free, and then you can buy the contracts, and then you can buy assistance and you can pay $500. And oh, by the way, we'll get you a loan. And oh, by the way, we'll sell you the paint to paint the fence. And oh,
Yeah.
by the way, we'll sell you the fence. And
Yeah.
then when you need to buy new furniture because you're part of the database. So now we got two major technology companies, and we got to know Microsoft was kind of interested. They just didn't go about
Of
getting the data
course.
the right way. So
Yep.
now you bring Microsoft, Internet Explorer, and with all their resources, they say, enter your real estate. When you're going to sell your real estate, make sure it gets into, because we get X gazillion eyeballs to our site. Make sure that it's here, and we'll offer you real estate services. We'll offer you legal services. We'll offer you forms and contracts.
I have a question about this to either of you because we talked about ICE before, way back. Okay. It's one of our podcasts. Who's really behind all this shit, guys? Like, who wants to destroy us so they could benefit in the long run? Who are our is ICE behind it? Is it collected of banks? Is it political? What are your thoughts? Without saying, yeah, of course, it's just an opinion. Who would you say is behind it? A conglomerate of people, like companies?
I would say whether or not it's organized, because that would be collusion.
Of course, yeah. And we don't have collusion in the United States.
We don't deal with, right? We don't accept that.
I have no
Whether,
idea.
whether or not there's collusion, if you look at the major companies, the multi-billion dollar, the trillion dollar companies, if you've got a $1 trillion company or a multi-billion dollar company, how are you going to grow it? You've got to choose really big markets to make it grow. If you're going to dedicate your resources to growing your company from a $500 billion company to a $1 trillion company, the only way, or from a $2 trillion company to a $3 trillion company, you can't do it when you're that big unless you go after major markets. And something like 63% of all the asset in this country is in the real estate. And
Yeah.
so I learned this lesson a number of years ago when John Riley and I worked for Mr. Yardy, when we sold two companies to Yardy. And I would go to Anant Yardy and say to him, here's a great idea. And he, at that time, he had like 6,000 employees and he was approaching $1 billion company. And he was a global company. I'd say, Anant, here's a great idea. We're working with MLSs. There's a great idea. Let's create this product and let's take it to market. And he would say to me, how big is that market? Well, that market, if that market might be, it's a $100 million market. Okay, great. How much of that market do you think you could capture? Well, we could capture 10%. That's $10 million. That's not a big enough market for me to dedicate my resources to. And so when you're a big company, you have to go after big targets.
There's nothing bigger than
Real
real
estate
estate, man. It's
is a
in the
big
trillions.
target,
Yeah.
right? So I would say that whether they're organized, whether they're thinking about it, that the big companies that want to grow bigger, they got to go after big targets. Real estate is a big target.
And the best way to attack us is by tearing us apart. And that's,
Pulling out the legs from the stool,
yep. And that's what's
one at a
happening.
time.
All right.
First
So,
one, offer of compensation. Second one, making you put your listings into the MLS. Now you're really weak. Supposedly you've weakened. Now, in my mind, the MLS has got this incredibly still valuable asset, and that's the data.
yep. The
So
data.
can we organize as MLSs? Can we take that data? Can we make that data available? And I'm not talking about data that's going to hurt you as somebody who sells real estate, but I'm talking about data that would be valuable to the capital markets, data that would be valuable to the insurance marketplaces. And can we capitalize on that? And maybe part of your job as somebody who is a real estate licensee 5 years from now, and maybe a way you'll be compensated is not transactionally, but by the data you bring to the table.
Well, I mean, look what Zillow's doing, right? Look what all these other companies are doing with the data. I think it's important to look at that and then say, how do we, so now that now that you guys scared the crap out of everybody, like how do how do we solve for this? Like because it, it's not over. Like we're in the middle of it and we don't know the outcome, obviously, but how do we get to that next stage in not in one piece, but in a place where we can still do business and still succeed and grow as real estate agents?
Well, my advice always the same is keep doing the things you're doing as long as you can do them. Right?
Okay.
So don't think that this is going to change overnight. It's in the process. It's been going on for a while. You know what? If you list real estate, keep listing real estate. If you figured out how to work with buyers under this new settlement agreement, then keep working with buyers. People still need to list and sell real estate. The data that gets created around it is very valuable, and understand how valuable your MLS is to you. Know that the MLS, and you really need to start to think about the value that MLS brings to the table, and to know that we really need one place to go, and that one place might be three different places. In my market in San Diego, we got two MLSs, so
Yeah,
you
we
can
got
go to, and we share
yeah.
the data, right? And you go back and forth, but this is such a valuable tool to us. So know that you want to be able to go to a place where the active inventory is readily available to you at a cost that you can accept. And that comes through MLS. That comes through your participation in the MLS, and realize the value that this data has. And as your MLS comes forward over the next year or two with ideas around monetizing the data, John
Yeah.
Riley and I talk about collecting the data, protecting the data, and monetizing the data. That's the future of MLS: to
All right.
collect, to protect, and to monetize. And then look for opportunities within this changing world for you as somebody who has a real estate license to be even more successful. Because just because things change doesn't mean that opportunity evaporates. As a
Not at
matter
all.
of
It just
fact,
changes.
there's a period of time typically between when something is discovered and then when everybody knows about it.
Hmm.
That period of time between discovery and what I call mass awareness,
Hmm.
that's where opportunity resides. And so pay attention to the opportunity between your discovery and when everybody knows about it. Because once everybody knows about it, the opportunity is pretty slim.
Yeah, I agree. And I think opportunity changes. We just need to keep an eye on what that opportunity is. I like that. Last question. Saul, John, I want to go to you first on this one. Who's protecting us? Who's protecting us, John?
Well, theoretically, the government, but don't trust the government. So, the DOJ has some part of it, some good attention,
Yeah.
to, but in other cases, they're kind of misguided, just like they recently showed by saying, okay, we'll give you 60 extra days, to hold on to the listing exclusive. No, that's very unrealistic. So, but I do like the way that they're looking at the office exclusive as being something they'd like perhaps to put the hammer down on, or at least control it better. That's what I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I agree with John. I love the idea of eliminating the office exclusive. I think the office exclusive is self-serving, now that with some exceptions, and the DOJ wants to get rid of the office exclusive. I
Okay.
agree.
I
Get
agree.
rid of the office. But then if you say at the same time, but you have 60 days to put your listing into the MLS, you just gave everybody a 60-day office exclusive.
Yeah, double ending creates other problems,
Right?
right?
So it's like it's contradictory. And so
Yeah.
they need to look at this more closely, I think. And the idea that private listing networks are the answer, I think it hasn't been looked at closely enough. And hopefully the government will try to protect us and will look at this and pay a little bit more attention to the way in which real estate's transacted. But that's going to be a hard one to maneuver
So
around.
let's say let's say, but we all agree that they're not. Let's say the government is trying to protect us, right? And they have our best interest as business owners at heart, right? Who's showing them that they need to protect us and why? Like, are our lobbyists doing anything with NAR? What's happening there, and how are they being demonstrated that this is what we should be doing based on these facts and research?
Yeah, so one of the things that we get with advocacy with NAR is awareness. And at the same time, though, they're fighting these lawsuits. They've got their own issues to deal with. So it's up to us to pay attention. And if somebody says, yeah, the roads yeah, I get it, the roads, but the roads probably cost too much money. And I know the government does a lot of things, but if you look at it, you look at the cost, you look at, there's more to the protection from the government than just the fact that they provide the roads and they do the things. I know. What have the Romans done for us lately? Right. But at
I
the
see what you're
same
saying.
time, how effectively do they do that? And
Yeah.
do they waste money doing it? And are there laws in place that create an expense that's greater than there needs to be? And so while,
So
yes,
who
I
do we
understand the value of the government, I served in the US military for 10 years, and I know that there are some things that the government does well. At the
yeah.
same time, there's some things it doesn't do well at all. And so can
So
we
how do we
fight
make them
that?
aware? Who's out there saying, "Hey, yo, government, whoever's in charge of this is actually what's going on. Let's let's actually do this because it benefits the consumer in the long run." Who's there doing that for us?
Well, typically that's part of what NAR does and what the state associations do and the local do in their advocacy efforts. And so now we get down to participating at your local association, at your state association, at the national association, be conversant in these items, understand what's going on, make your voice be heard locally, volunteer for the committees. I know it's a lot of work and people don't want to do it. It's not as much as you might think.
Okay.
Um, but really, there is no substitute for your own due diligence. And so it's really up to us as individuals to participate in any way we can to take the message to the appropriate parties and hope that somebody listens.
You know,
Yeah.
what I look for is at these lawsuit levels is a recognition that rather than a judge coming up and saying, you know, this looks on its face to be illegal, therefore I'm going to rule under the per se rule versus the rule of reason rule, that would be a major achievement for us, especially in these cases where they're going to reevaluate the top TAN case. If they can argue better for a rule of reason, that gives us a chance to talk about the fact that we have a lot of competitive.
Yeah.
Under the per se rule, the attorneys aren't allowed by the judge to make those arguments. So that would be what I would look for from the legal point of view.
Got it. What can we do, guys, to get more involved? Go to our local boards, complain to the mirror. I don't know. What do we do?
I know so I would look into, it's a good time of year to do it, to see like in 2025, what is your local association looking for, right? In the way of volunteers to participate on a legislative advocacy committee. They doing anything locally? Look to your MLS. Now, there are other things you can do. You can get involved in local politics yourself outside of your association. But one thing we know for sure is that at the association, people are working to the best of their ability to be able to bring certain things to the fore. Now, at the same time, I know that they don't always do it right. I know that the staff isn't always perfect, right? I know that there are issues, but what else do you have, right?
Yeah, look, I'm gonna run for office then. Jeez, I'm just gonna go locally and be like, let's start locally, let's change some crap, and then see
You
where
know,
that goes.
I thought about that once, but I got too
So,
wrapped up in trying to earn a living.
It's
And
so it's a challenge. It's a challenge. Listen, I just started my own brokerage, so let's go with that first.
yeah,
Perfect time while everything's going crazy, right? I'm thinking of what you said, Saul. There's an opportunity in changes,
there's an
right?
opportunity, particularly as the brokerage world is going to change. And so, a great question people have to ask themselves is what is the job description of the person we today call a real estate broker or a real estate salesperson? That person today, what is the job description of that person 5 years from now?
Mm.
But I guarantee you it won't be the same.
All right. We've got a lot for next time, guys, and I'm pretty sure more stuff will happen. November, is it November 26th or 27th? I can't remember. When does everything go in?
26th, I think.
So November 26th, we still have some time there. We're thinking the DOJ comes in, says, "Hey, we're here. We were just busy with the other antitrust stuff. This is what we think." We'll see if that happens. These are every 2 weeks. These are live and they're recorded. They go into our YouTube channel right there. And then we also have a place that Saul and John write some great pieces. It's called the Data Advocate. Keeps you up to date as to what's actually happening. So if you ever want to do some super light reading and you don't have to reread any of it to understand it, go to the Data Advocate. That's what it is. Saul, John, thank you so much, guys.
Great to see you, Tristan. See you in a couple of weeks.
See you in a couple of weeks. Bye, everyone.